Declan Rice will cost 80 million plus most likely, and we'll maybe look for wages of around 250k. And some Chelsea fans tell me we could do with another winger if we sell Ziyech, Pulisic, Hudson-Odoi. We need 4 wingers, Matisse. But what if there was a player that could play out wide as a wide playmaker like Eriksen did under Poch, whilst playing other positions that isn't too expensive? Let's talk about it. Yo people, welcome back to the YouTube channel. You already know what time it is. It's time for another video. It's time for your Poch perfect midfield video. Big up your damn selves in the building. Make sure you smash up the likes and subscribe. There is a lot to discuss. I've got 6 names on this list that I'm going to go through, and of course the context, it's rejuvenating and revitalizing, replenishing our midfield that we have kind of let fall by the wayside for many years until the recent massive investment of Enzo Fernandez being the beginning of that reshuffle. And of course the loan deals of Sal Niguez, of Zakaria in this season have clear neglect. We know that we need a player in this position, but we refuse to kind of dig deep and find the funds and find the priority to put it all on paper. Now for me, in this position, it's the most important for the summer coming up. Yes, we have the goalkeeper. Yes, we have the striker, but this is the engine. This is the midfield. This is the epicenter. This is the area of the field where we need to kick on now and kind of move away from, yes, great players and good players that we've had over the years and go into pastures new. And it's an area of the field where there could be outgoings for homegrown players such as Mason Mount, such as Ruben Loftus-Cheek, such as Gallagher, due to contract situations, potentially just trying to bring in money for FFP or, you know, just to balance the books a little bit, and also squad space as well. The squad is way too big and there's a few players here. Potentially, realistically, 2 out of the 3 could probably leave. So we're going to need to look at what we're going to do in this area. Now, it's a young midfield. If you're looking at Andres Santos and Carney, there's been recent links for Carney to go out on loan, namely Brighton as well. Maybe could be involved in a deal with one of these midfielders I'm going to talk about. But we're going to go straight into it with the duo KAISEDO and McAllister. They've had great seasons. They've played in a very progressive, attack-minded, vertical Brighton team, a box midfield that like to funnel the ball through the middle and then, you know, unleash on attacks, and brilliant build-up play, in fact. And this is a great sign for a top team. If you're trying to recruit a midfielder, it's very good to come through that Brighton system, that De Zerbi way of playing, previously Potter, but very attack-minded, ball-dominant team. We've seen them go to the Emirates, we've seen them go to Etihad, dominate possession, play on the front foot, look like the leading Champions League team coming to roast and to ruin your day. And that's what you want. And that's why Ndidi, for example, at Leicester, despite having a brilliant season 2019, 2020, winning trophies, being part of a successful Leicester team for the size of that team, he couldn't make that big move potentially because he wasn't in a ball dominant team. He wasn't showing signs of being press resistant, getting his foot on the ball, being able to dictate, control games tempo wise. He was just a strictly ball winning midfielder. Now, that's not an issue you're going to get with McAllister and KAISEDO. So that's the first thing to get off the list. They're going to go into top teams and they're going to be able to play a certain brand of football. Now, both of these players, in my opinion, are going to command between 70 and 80 million pounds minimum. Like, that is the kind of ballpark that I'm setting for a price of these players, both of them individually, not collectively, of course. De Zerbi's kind of already accepted defeat, that he will be losing these players in the market, and has kind of sounded out Brighton to go and replace them in the summer. And they've already started that, potentially with James Milner and others to come through. So it looks like they're going to lose these players. Now, there's going to be a lot of competition. Chelsea, in my opinion, are in an interesting position because we have money, but we're not in Europe. So that's something to factor in. Now, if you're talking to me about who is more important profile-wise for Chelsea in terms of what we lack, I think KAISEDO is more important to come into this team in comparison to McAllister in terms of what we lack, what we need in this midfield, and what he brings. KAISEDO recently has been played at right back, even to nullify the likes of Martinelli. We saw that even when Trossard came on. Nobody knows him better than De Zerbi, of course, being a former Brighton player. He was brilliant defensively, and KAISEDO has been brilliant defensively all season. This guy is brilliant at winning the ball, he's brilliant at making tackles, he's brilliant at covering the ground, and he's press resistant, and he can receive the ball in tight spaces in midfield. Every Brighton midfielder has to be able to do that. They have to be able to receive the ball off the centre backs, turn, be press resistant, swivel, you know, and play out. So that's not a concern. And this is what an upside is to Caicedo. I think he can be a Kante replacement. I think he can bring the off the ball attributes that Kante has or had when he was younger, but also I trust him more in those deeper midfield areas in terms of being press resistant, being able to receive the ball in tight areas and help us build out from the back. That's something that I would have a problem with Kante. And I would also potentially worry about Kante holding a position off the ball as a sitter, as we know he likes to roam and close down spaces, etc. I would trust Caicedo to do that a little bit more, and he's younger at 21, so maybe a little bit more teachable under a Poch that loves to develop players and instruct them and progress them. So very young player, very talented, and a very, very impressive skill set that I think commands this type of fee currently, and it's why everybody's chasing him. So I think he could replace Kante for us and do a lot of what Kante does. Now, would I solely want him to be the sitter? I think there are other options out there that are more suited to that position in comparison to a Caicedo, but I think he could partner Enzo and it could be a very good partnership. It's not the maybe perfect partnership. I think I can think of other partnerships that maybe make a little bit more sense, but it's much more closer to a stronger partnership than a McAllister and Enzo. And a McAllister and Enzo partnership off the ball for me is just, it's not really it. McAllister is a player that's played in those double pivot positions for Brighton, but he's also played as a 10, and he was playing as a 10 before this season, before he was moved backwards as well due to the outgoing Basuma. And obviously Gilmore's come through, Pascal Gross has played in this position as well over the weekend, so it's allowed McAllister to go back to playing as a 10. If you look at the two heat maps for Caicedo and for McAllister, you'll see McAllister takes up higher positions on average than Caicedo. Caicedo is the more defensive player. Caicedo would be, you know, more responsibility for winning the ball back, for of course playing the simple pass, and McAllister's the more progressive carrier, the one that takes the ball into the next phase, the guy that you want taking shots at the edge of the box, the guy that is brilliant at dribbling and all of those progressive actions. He's very, very good at McAllister. He's extremely press resistant, brilliant technical player, great shooting range, brilliant set piece taker as well. So he's just a really, really, really well-rounded, clean-cut player, McAllister. But do I feel like we would need to spend as much money on McAllister? Do we need to spend 70 million, 75 million on McAllister for what we need? Personally, I would say no. Where would you play McAllister? If he was playing a 4-2-3-1 at Chelsea, which is obviously what Poch played at Tottenham, where would he play? Would he play in the 2? Well, he's not going to play with Enzo because that doesn't really make any sense. He's not going to play instead of Enzo because we've spent a lot of money on Enzo, and Enzo is also a quality player with great passing range as well and great creativity options. So are you going to play him in the 10? Or if you play him in the 10, second striker, that's Nkunku. Ideally, you'd assume he's going to play in that position under Poch. He's not going to play on the wing. You know, he's better in the central area. So where does he play? Why spend 70 to 80 million on McAllister? Listen, great player, but I don't think it's worth the money. I don't think we need to be going after McAllister. And that's contrary to reports because, of course, Poch apparently really wants him. He's on the shortlist from Argentina, of course. It seems like our influence is very Argentine. But for me, I don't think McAllister is necessary to purchase for that price. What he does, I rate it. I think he's quality, but I think you can get it at a cheaper price point in other leagues. And I'm going to mention someone right now who I think is similar to McAllister in terms of the way he plays. And I think he could have a similar impact on the Premier League and for a much cheaper fee. So he's not guaranteed to start because I don't think we need this player, this type of player, to come into our 11 immediately, as I've just said, in our formation. But if you are losing a Gallagher, if you are losing a Mason Mount, and you do need another 8, Loftus-Cheek, and you do need another 8, because people have said to me, listen, you can't maybe just get one midfielder. If you was to lose all 3 of them, in that scenario, you do need to go and get another midfielder, regardless of having Andre Santos, Carney, and I accept that, fair enough. If we was to lose all of them, then yes, there's definitely a space. I think Enzo Lavie, who plays for Lorient in Ligue 1, I think he is very similar. He's played as a left forward in a front 3 in a 3-4-3, so as an inside forward. He's played in a 2-man midfield as well, and he's also played as a 10. He's very positionally versatile. He's very good at progressive carries. He's a very good dribbler. He's a very good chance creator, brilliant set piece taker. He's very similar in that way to McAllister. And I think Enzo Lavie even more could be suited to playing as a wide playmaker, which a lot of people have spoken about with Poch. With Eriksen as a wide playmaker, somebody that can create chances from the wide position. You go with one winger in a Son, Mudryk or Madueke, and you go with one wide playmaker that can tuck in, and that would be, in my opinion, an Enzo Lavie. I've not really seen McAllister play wide for Brighton. He's mainly played central. Like I said, the central areas are quite crowded. If he used to play midfield three, I think, listen, you can play Enzo, a sitter, and McAllister, but I would, again, still prefer KAISEDO as one of those midfield free options because he just provides a completely different set of attributes in comparison to Enzo, whereas Enzo and McAllister, there are overlaps. But with Enzo Lavie, much cheaper. He was wanted by Bournemouth, I think in recent windows. And I think he's a quality player, just waiting to kind of move into the next level. And Lorient, they average about 45% possession. I think in a ball dominant team, he'll be class. He's a quality player. I think he's very much ready to break through. He's going to cost a lot less. And I think Chelsea, listen, we talk about we're going to scout. We talk about we're going to invest in cheaper signings with more, scouting done on them and try and, be smart with our funds. McAllister is the finished product at Brighton because they signed him on the cheap and they made him into the finished product. I'm not saying we need to do that of every signing. Sometimes you do need to go big, like Liverpool have done with Alisson, Van Dijk. But I think in this particular profile of player, which I don't think is absolutely 100% necessary to go and splash 80 million on. It's not a six. It's not a player that absolutely balances our midfield. I think you can go cheaper in this position with Enzo Lavie as maybe your fourth signing of the summer. And I think he could play a variety of positions, and I think he's a quality player. So for me, that is someone that I'd be looking at, Enzo Lavie instead of McAllister. French, under 23, he's 23 years old. I think he would do a brilliant job for us, and he could play in the wide playmaker role, he could play in the 10, and he could even drop into the central midfield areas if he had to in that double pivot. I think he's a quality player, especially in a possession-based possession-based team. So definitely take a look at it if you haven't already. For me, that's my alternative to McAllister. I don't know what he would cost, but definitely wouldn't cost 70 to 80 million. I'll tell you that for free. So keep your eyes on Enzo Lavie. I really say that because I've said his name before. Now moving on to other options. So we've gone through KAISEDO, we've gone through McAllister and Enzo Lavie as well. Now we're going to talk about Declan Rice, talk about Agate, and obviously Paulinho. I think these are the three options that you could talk about for your six holding midfield position to balance out Enzo perfectly, potentially, in a double pivot. More like a Wanyama kind of mould for what Pochettino has had at Tottenham. Now, talking about Rice, first of all, he's obviously going to be extremely expensive, regardless of the fact that he's got 1 year left on his contract. I think West Ham have a clause or a trigger to extend it by a further year. They may do that next, say if they weren't to sell him hypothetically, it looks like he's going to go. Potentially, again, Moyes conceding to the fact that he could leave. If they weren't to sell him in the summer, they would then trigger the year, and he most likely would have another year on top of next summer in 2024. So it wouldn't be a free transfer next summer. So don't think about Rice as a free transfer if you don't get him this summer, because they'll trigger and he'll have another year, right? So Declan Rice, listen, he's a long-term club target for years. Brilliant switcher of play with both feet. A player that obviously has played as a more defensive-minded player in the two, with Souček going forward as a box-to-box midfielder, crashing the box, scoring headers, and then a swap roles with Souček and become a more box-to-box midfielder himself, and has shown good striking technique, able to contribute for a few goals here and there. And like I said, brilliant switcher of play with both feet, very good footballer in terms of the way he plays, and he leads in most metrics, if not all metrics, for West Ham every single season in tackles, interceptions. So he's cleared himself there. Very, very good player, and brings leadership. Now, when we talk about leadership, I don't think Rice comes into this team and just takes the armband. I think that's wrong, right? If you're coming into a new team, you've got to earn your stripes with that new team at that new level that you're playing at. Playing for West Ham and playing for Chelsea is two completely different stratospheres. So I think he would enter the leadership group. I think naturally his character, the way he kind of carries himself, how bold he is in his personality, I think he would enter the leadership group, and then it would be on him via performance to then potentially go and push for captaincy in future years with the other contenders, whether it be Reece James, etc., etc. So that's another thing to add. But he does bring added leadership and vocal, be a vocal person in the background, which we don't really have. Let's be honest, we lack leaders in this team. That's something that we've lacked, and we're lacking with Rudiger leaving and Jorginho leaving. So we do need to replace leaders. So that's another bow in his arrow. Now, if we talk about Declan Rice personally quickly, he's obviously had a child in his personal life. It seems like London is where he wants to be, so he wants to stay in London, and that only means that it's us or Arsenal. Arsenal appear to be the favourites. Arsenal have wanted him in January but didn't want to pay the extreme fee they'd have to pay to take West Ham's captain mid-season, but they will probably most likely go again in the summer. It's someone that Arteta has communicated with and wants, so that's no surprise that we're competing with them. Now, they're going to have Champions League football. They have the money as long as their ownership actually decide to spend it. They are in a stronger position to purchase a player like Declan Rice than we are, who sit in 11th, 12th, wherever the hell we dangle currently. So that is a disadvantage that we have. So as much as I think that this would be a great partner for Enzo, and I think he'd do very well for us, I'm not going to tell you that this is the be all and end all, because it's not. There's other options out there, and we have to talk about those. Agate at Sporting Lisbon is one of those, and Paulinho, who signed for Fulham for 20 million from Sporting Lisbon, is another one. Now, both of them look proper. They look good. Like Ugarte, from going back and looking at him now, top 99 percentile for tackles and interceptions. Pass completion is good as well, and just a really good footballer. But also, this is a proper six. This is a proper win the ball back midfielder. He ain't trying to give you. He's not really as complete as Declan Rice. He's not going to go forward and carry the ball and give you goals in the final third or anything like that, or try and contribute to an attack. He just is there primarily to win the ball back, receive, no problem in tight spaces. He can do that. Switch play, no problem, he can do that. But he wants to defend. He wants to defend and be that six. And I think that is the perfect partner for someone like Enzo, who is clearly not a defensive midfielder. He can contribute, but he should not be the primary defensive midfielder in your two. We know that from his former partner, like I said, at Benfica, Luis. So Agate really looks good. Really 6 foot, 22 years old. He should be on the short list. 52 million release clause. It's expensive, but I think that's the type of player, from what I've seen, I can't see how he doesn't acclimatise to the Premier League. He's physical, Uruguayan, bruv, you know what I mean? He's going to come with all the minerals and all the vitamins. This guy is going to get stuck in South American grit and flair at the same time. I think he looks like a really good player. Seems like someone that will take to the Premier League like a duck to water. And no surprise that Paulinho at Fulham, who just came from Sporting, has literally done just that. He's taken to the Premier League like a duck to water. When he plays in this Fulham team, you can see the clear difference between when he's on the pitch and when he's not on the pitch. I watched Fulham against Arsenal when they didn't have Paulinho, and their whole midfield just fell apart. Similar to another name I'm going to bring up finally, which is Lavie, at the same team, against the same team. Again, fall apart without him. But Paulinho leads in tackles per 90. Again, 20 million from Sporting, and obviously just 27, very experienced, very good footballer. Again, switches play wonderfully. Just really the perfect kind of six that you would be looking for, again, to kind of sit next to Enzo and do the defensive work. Win the ball back, win the tackles, the interceptions, physical, tall, strong, all of that. You need that balance. You see it with Rodri, Casemiro. I've said it before many a time, Partey, even though a little bit of a drop off. You need that balance in midfield. We've had it before with Mikel, we've had it with Matisse, we've had it with Essien, all of these guys. You need to have that balance. We are weak. We're a weak team. I'm not going to lie to you. Our spine is weak. We can't stand straight. So we need to fix that. And these players that I'm talking about, they provide that spine. I talked to you about improving the spine, the striker, the DM, the goalkeeper. And if you're going to get a fourth, I've mentioned Enzo Lavie as that type of player, but you need to fix that spine, and it needs to get back to being a strong Chelsea. You can still play football, you can still play the beautiful game, but as you see with City, with Diaz, with Rodri, with Hairline, as you see with many title-winning teams, we can go back to Company, we can go to Van Dijk when he's in his prime. You need a proper spine. You need physically imposing players, especially in this league. It's a very physical league. You don't want to be weak. You don't want to be a team that can be bullied. And regardless of whether it works or not, to be a weaker team and pleasant on the eye, it's just not in our DNA as Chelsea. We have always been a physically imposing team that can bully and can really, ruffle some feathers and be a bit of a shithouse. Now, I'm all for playing the great football, and that's my preference, but don't lose that physicality, that what makes us what we are. So for me, Paulinho, Agate, great shouts as alternatives to Rice. I'd be happy with both. Not both, but either option. I think quality. If you bring in one of those two, happy days. Agate, 52 million. I don't know what Paulinho would cost, but both of them look like top potential DM options that do the basics and are very good on the ball. I'd have no problem with them receiving the ball under the press, things like that. Good in tight spaces, good control, ball control, all that good stuff. So lovely stuff. And then Lavie, Final words on Lavie. He's played 27 games this season, so obviously doesn't have the vast level of experience at the top level like a Declan Rice in comparison, who's made over 200 appearances. He's played next to James Ward-Prowse in that two-man midfield for Southampton. I've seen some big performances from him against Chelsea, against Arsenal before he came off, and then consequently Southampton conceded 2 goals when he left the pitch with like 5 minutes to go plus injury time, and against City in the Carabao Cup as well. There has been some solid performances. This is a very good player. This is a player that Pochettino will take to the moon. He's technically secure. He's come from City's academy. Joe Shields knows him, of course. Technically secure, very, very good on the ball, brilliant in tight spaces. He's just quality. He's only 19, but you can see the quality. And my jaw has dropped, genuinely dropped quite a few times from watching him when I've seen some of the things that he can do on the ball. Now, the only risk with a player like this is that he doesn't have much experience at the top level. He's only played 27 games, like I said. There's still going to be things that he needs to improve. If you're asking him to literally anchor your midfield or be that guy at 19, you are taking a bit of a risk next season, because there are going to be moments where he makes mistakes. It's going up to a higher level now at Chelsea in comparison to Southampton, literally at the bottom. And for where we're aspiring to be next season, it is a lot of responsibility to place on young shoulders in a team that already has a lot of young midfielders in Carney, in Andre Santos if he gets to work permanent, etc. So it's a bit of a gamble, and I don't want with Lavie us to bring him in, and some people will say, well, bring in Agate and Lavie, or bring in Paulinho and Lavie, and you can do that. Lavie is probably going to cost minimum 50 million in my opinion, so it's an expensive, minimum 100 million in total, in totality, kind of double swoop minimum. But you have to give Lavie game time. You know, you can't stifle Lavie's development by saying you're going to bring him in as a second choice like a Calvin Phillips at a City and not give him any game time. Obviously Calvin Phillips has been injured, but kind of go with your first choice and just give him little, you know what this club's like. We love to do this. You know, we promise people that they're going to play and we're going to give them a chance to develop. We stifle the shit out of them. I don't want that to happen with Lavie. It's not a good thing for that to happen with Lavie. Lavie, I'm not going to lie to you, if he went to Brighton next from Southampton who are relegated, under De Zerbi, Lavie, Jesus Christ, that right there is the perfect transfer. So I have my reservations a little bit, just purely because whether we're going to actually, first of all, can we afford to play him regularly, and will we then play him regularly? So it's a little bit of a risky one, but he's only 19. So great player, great talent. I would prefer, to be honest, the other options over him, purely for a little bit more experience. But if we got him, rest assured, I will be happy, because he's a quality young player, and I think Pochettino will turn him into a superstar. So those are your options for your defensive midfield positions. I've spoken about, obviously, your more advanced midfield positions, whether that's KAISEDO, who's maybe in the mold of a Kante, a little bit of a box-to-box, but can do those defensive actions. Or you're talking about your McAllisters. Personally, like I said, I wouldn't spend the money on McAllister that he's going to be quoted on. I think Enzo Lavie is a much cheaper option. Talented player. He's only 1 year younger than McAllister, but Enzo Lavie is one of those players that will get signed by a Brighton, get signed by a Brentford, or get signed by a whoever, and have a brilliant Premier League season, and then their price just skyrockets and everybody's like, oh, we have to sign. So for me, for a player that's not absolutely kind of priority as a second midfielder, because that's what it is, as an advanced midfielder, that's where I would kind of go with a player like that and splash out on the goalkeeper potentially if you have to, with the options, the striker, and obviously the holding midfielder. So that's my kind of opinion on it. In terms of priority for me, just to round up the video, in terms of my opinion, I would say Ugarte, fantastic signing, I would love it. Paulinho, fantastic signing, would love it. Both of them have had great seasons and play in teams that you know, they've shown their capabilities this season. Declan Rice is unrealistic in my opinion due to Arsenal's interest, but again, would do a good job, but slightly more expensive than the first two that I've named. So maybe value for money, you could say Paulinho and Agate are obviously brilliant options. Rice gives you a little bit more leadership in terms of his history with captaincy at West Ham. KAISEDO over McAllister in terms of Brighton options. Obviously, when Stanley has connections there, and obviously Poch has, with McAllister, the Argentine influence, but when Stanley knows them both. I think when Stanley's recommended KAISEDO more so than McAllister, and I definitely would agree with that, reportedly. And Enzo Lavie over McAllister in terms of being smart with the money for midfield. So Agate and Enzo Lavie, bring to me, I would love. Paulinho and Enzo Lavie, bring to me, I would love. KAISEDO as a Kante replacement, no problem, bring to me, I would love. That's kind of my thinking, my process right now. And then in a future video, we'll get to striker and we'll get to goalkeeper. But I think this video is vitally important because this position is crucial, absolutely crucial to the way we move forward. We have to get this right and we have to be very serious with it. And just finally, I think Agate, what makes him so good is that his release clause is there. And as long as he wants to join, this is a signing that you can get done immediately. You don't have to wait. I think with Rice, there could be a bidding war. There could be a lot of back and forth with West Ham. We're rivals with them. They're reluctant to sell to us. With Paulinho, Fulham, not rivals, but, you know, still, he's only been there one season. They're probably going to demand minimum 50 million. It might become a bit of a back and forth. Agate, the release clause is there. You could trigger it if you really believe in the talent. He's only 22, so it kind of fits with the under 25, under 23 model. You get him in, that's your 6 sorted. We move on. We start selling. From that moment, we start selling, and then you could maybe go for an Enzo Lavie. Not that we're even interested. It's just a name I've come up with in the future, later on in the window. So that's why Agate for me is a really good option, is that it just kind of just removes all of the questions away. And obviously the Brighton midfielders, it goes without saying, bidding war. Bidding war, bidding war, bidding war, Liverpool and Arsenal as well. So big up your damn selves. Make sure you subscribe, like, and I will see you guys next time. In a bit, people. Peace.